Hi there, and welcome back to another episode on Let's Talk Football Careers with myself, Barry, and today's special guest, Ian Murray. How you doing, Ian?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Grand. I'm looking forward to running through your career here. You've got 6 Scotland caps. You played over 300 games with Hibs, and you also had moves in between that with Rangers, Norwich, Brecon, and Alloa, and all that before we move on to your early management career. So, if it's all right, could you just start off really where it began, Ian? I mean, I believe you started at Hutchie Vale.
Yeah, that was my sort of first boys club under 10s. I actually used to my brother used to play football as well, my older brother, so I used to hang about his training. Back in the day, it was like under 10s, under 11s, under 12s. Not like what it is these days, where there's 5 or 6 teams at every age group. There was only one team at every age group. Mm-hmm. So you went in there. So I went to Hutchie Vale. I was actually at their kids' school when I was really young. They used to have probably one of the first to have it. Maybe 6, 7, 8 years old on a Friday evening, we'd go and play 4 or 5 aside over at Sawton Enclosure, and then after that you would progress to the 10s, 11s, whatever it was. So I was at Hutchie for under 10s till about it was either under 14s or under 15s. I think it was under 15s when I eventually left them. But a fantastic time, it was, and it's. I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time the dominant boys club in Edinburgh. Produced a lot of players, and we had a lot of guys in our team that went on as well.
Yeah, I mean, I always remember as a youngster trying to make sure that we always avoided Hutchie Vale as a team. They were always a good side. They seem to have the structure in place right ahead of their time, I think.
Yeah, that's probably it. And just going back to the having that soccer school or kids school at the time, that was like one of the first ones. Maybe the first. I don't know, but it was just fun. As I say, it's a bit like what it is now, but a bit earlier in terms of you'd have a wee mini league between yourselves. It was competitive, but it was fun competitiveness. It wasn't anything else in that. And then out of that wee group, they would select the players that they wanted to go at the 10s, 11s, or whatever it is. But yeah, ultimately it was fun. If you throw in what we had at when you went under 10s, if you throw in school football, it's a fantastic mix for any young guy looking to be a footballer.
Yep, and that seems to be the key at an early age. That, like I say, Hutchie Vale mastered, and other teams have caught up now. But it's keeping the fun aspect. I mean, I think it was Billy Davies that I was speaking, and he said that. He says if you can keep them enjoying it, he says that's half the battle. He says and the talent will come through.
Yeah, well, I always link it to other things. Any sport and anything that people want to do, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. The minute the fun goes out of it, then what's the point? Football and sport are probably slightly different. There's always going to be disappointments along the way, be that at 10 years old when you're not picked for the school team or you're not picked to start the game. But you've got to enjoy what you're doing or enjoy the battle of trying to get to where you want to be. And Billy's correct. The minute the fun goes, then you may as well close the shop.
Yeah, it becomes a chore, and they stop enjoying it. But from Hutchie Vale, can I just check? You moved on. You had a spell at Dundee United. Was that under the McLean brothers that were there at the time, or was that Paul Sturrock?
Yeah, it was Jim McLean was the chairman. Tommy was the manager. Billy Kirkwood at some point was the manager. Ivan Golak.
Ivan Golak as well.
As well. So I went to Dundee United. I used to train with them in Edinburgh when I was still playing for Hutchie Vale, and then back then. They set up a youth initiative league in Glasgow. It was a West League, and they asked me to go and join their team. So I left Hutchie Vale. I think it must have been at the end under 15 season. I'm pretty sure it was, which maybe doesn't sound much to people now, but at the time for me, that was a big move for me because I'd been there for 5 years at Hutchie. All my friends, my teammates were there, but there was just something that I wanted to do, and I went over to Dundee United. We used to play on a Sunday rather than a Saturday. Used to go up to Tannadice for work experience or holidays, Easter, Christmas, summer, all that sort of stuff. And at that time, Dundee United were pretty renowned for their youth football, and they won the BP Youth Cup a number of times. It brought through players like Duncan Ferguson, Christian Daly, Billy McKinlay. Craig Easton was just coming through. Jim Patterson was coming through. So I was thrown into a pretty high standard environment pretty quickly, but I loved it and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, but I think that set you up for the rest of your career. You know, the start. You see that a lot. How certain players and their characters are moulded. But the Hutchie Vale and the Dundee United working. I mean, the step up for Hutchie to Dundee United, and then obviously just being around the players that you've mentioned, and you know Jim McLean and Tommy McLean and all that. You're starting to feel like you're getting closer to where you want to be at such a young age. Yeah?
Absolutely, standards. You know, like again, people will disagree with it, or you know, and things have moved on now as well. So we're in a different era. But at Hutchie Vale, we used to wear, you know, cup final shirt and tie at the game. When I went to Dundee United, it was shirt and tie training.
Aye.
You know, so I was used to it. And then I remember actually going to my first day at Hibs, and it happened really quickly. We'll go into that later. But when I turned my first day with shirt and tie, I got absolutely hammered for it, which was kind of good. But that was what I was brought up with. That was the standards that I was taught. And again, it won't happen now. We know that.
Because as your career, I mean, I speak to a lot of different sort of eras of players' careers, and I think your career was just sort of coming through as, you know, the mobile phones had all kicked in, social media was starting to kick in, and things were taking a turn now. But it's funny how you watch it. Can I just move on to your time at Hibs? Then I've wrote down here that well, who was it that signed you? Was that McLeish that signed you?
Yeah, it was Art McLeish. You know, I was, again, to just go back a little bit in terms of the years, I signed a schoolboy form, which was called an S form with Dundee United. So they always have first sort of calling you.
Yeah.
I was, and still am, a homebird. I mean, I travel better now, but at that time I really didn't travel well. No. Be it one night, 7 that no, not for me. Yeah. So one afternoon out the blue, Hibs phoned, mobile phones were just coming in. We obviously didn't have one. And I was young. Hibs phoned the house and said, what you need to sign. Probably the call I was waiting on. Because I was due to go full time with Dundee United, so I had to go up to Tannadice and tell Jim McLean that I wasn't signing, which didn't go down.
At a young age as well.
Yeah, but you were thrown in there. You know, I had to literally sit in an office myself and say to Jim McLean, I'm not signing. And anybody knows how Jim McLean operated. It didn't go down very well, but it was what I wanted. So I look back on it, and at the time I probably didn't know. I was quite headstrong without knowing it, because I left Hutchie Vale to go to Dundee United and nobody else would do it. I left Dundee United to go to Hibs. Yeah. That season, Hibs got relegated in the first division. But I went in to see Alec McLeish and Billy McNeil, who was the director of football at the time. And it was, I don't know, it might have been, let's just say, a Monday afternoon. And they said, right, we'll see you tomorrow at training. So I literally went overnight into... I had no time to think, which is, again, probably a good thing. Hibs had been relegated to the first division. But back in that time, Dundee United had the right to withhold my registration. You know, that was the rules, and they decided to do that. So I couldn't have ever played for Hibs at that time. But luckily, again, the disappointing relegation was everybody. It allowed me to go and play bounce games for Hibs.
So it triggered that, right?
Yeah, and train with them as well, obviously. So after that, I had to wait a year, and then the year came and gone, and I was, could sign properly. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned Billy McNeil there, a massive character that's lost to us now, unfortunately. Rest in peace. But could you just tell us what he was like as a man, a person, a coach, things?
Yeah, I didn't see him coaching too much. Obviously, he was at Hibs for a bit of time, and I think he had the interim manager as well for a couple of games, and then director of football. It was quite a short time as director of football, but he was very, obviously, when you go into, you're going to go and sign for a club, and you've got two guys in front. You have Billy McNeil's stature and Alec McLeish's stature as a player at that time. You can't fail to be impressed, and they try and make you feel welcome, make you feel at home, but also again they will demand off you. That's pretty normal. But yeah, look, I think a lot of Hibs supporters in particular will probably forget that Billy McNeil was at Easter Road and then director of football role. But for me, he was, over the brief spell that we met and worked together, fantastic.
It's again another character to meet that's top level that you're looking at. You're obviously thinking to yourself, right? I'm working with good people here. So your time at Hibs, like you said, that was the first season, full season. You played, you got promoted, right? But that was the first season,
Yeah.
And you went on. Well, I've got here that you made your debut, but then your second game, I think that was against Dunfermline. You got a goal in your debut as well, I mean, how does it all feel stepping out for Hibs in front of that big crowd, you know? And
it happened really quick for me. You know, it was only a year and a bit after I went. To be fair to the gaffer, Alec McLeish at the time, he used to always say to me, you know, Ian, if I could pick you for the first team squad today, I would. But obviously, with what was going on behind the scenes in terms of the registration stuff, he couldn't. And I used to always think he was just, you know, keeping my confidence high, giving me a sort of boost and all that sort of stuff. And then it came to the pre-season. We went back for pre-season, and I made sure I'd made myself really, really fit. We'd actually had voluntary sessions that mid-season because of the first division finishing so early compared to the Premier League. And I went to every single one of them. So when I went back to the training, I was really, really fit. And it was during pre-season that Alec read out the list that was going on to the pre-season tour of Denmark. And I was the last name mentioned, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'd never even thought about it.
No.
Been training with the first team sort of on and off, not like every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So I was happy with that. So I went on that trip. I never played a minute of the game, of any games. And I came back to or back from that trip, and I picked up a little bit of a virus. I don't know what it was, and it took me a long time to go. Well, not a long time to go over it physically, but football wise, it took me a while. And by the time we got to Christmas, shall we say, my form was through the window. It was poor, really poor.
Undone all your hard work with the pre-season and all your extra training sessions were all undone with that.
God, I still don't know what it was, but it was at the case where, you know, I was getting really frustrated because I couldn't do things that were pretty easy for me. I think Donald Park, who was a youth manager at the time, was getting frustrated, and obviously Alec and Andy Watson, who were the manager and assistant manager, had other things to worry about. But I think people were probably looking at going, what's going on here and what's happened, because it was kind of blink of an eye type stuff. And then we had
also sort of interrupt. There's also that element where it looks like, oh, he's went over to Denmark, he's never got any playing time, and then is he at it? You know, that's what you're, or it's at least going to be in your head, that. Eh?
Yeah, that's it. I literally couldn't understand what was going on with my body at the time, and as I say, I still don't know what happened. And then we went. Hibs, obviously, with the start of the season, Hibs were doing really well. Started really well that season, and then we went to Trinidad and Tobago for the winter break. Obviously, Russell with Happy was there, so that's probably part of the reason why we went. And I wasn't going. I was left out because, like I say, my form was poor and deservedly so. And then I got called in at kind of maybe 1 or 2 nights before. A couple of first team boys had pulled out. Gaffer pulled me in, and I went over there and I started the last game of the tour. And I remember it was incredibly warm, like ridiculous heat over there. And came back and I started the next league game.
Yeah, but I think that's gave you the kick on, the confidence, the belief again in yourself, your body, everything, to then kick on. Because you played, I mean, I've got in here, you made 25 appearances that season, but I've also wrote in something about Iowa on loan. What happened there? You ended up on loan at Iowa for a wee bit, eh?
Yeah, I went to Iowa. I think it was it the season after I think I went to Iowa?
I've got in here, sorry, 2000 and then 2001, stroke 2001. So yeah, that must have been the following season you joined.
It was the following season. Again, it was the winter break that we had 4 weeks. Hibs were going to Spain, and the gaffer decided to send a few of us out on loan. I think Tam McManus might have went on loan, myself and a player called Alan Reid.
Instead of going to Spain, you went to Iowa.
I went, yeah, I did.
You're a week.
Yeah, which again, it was a funny loan spell because Iowa were actually in the first division at the time, playing against good sides Livingston and Inverness. That was the 2 games that I played for Iowa, and I say only 2 because of the weather, because Iowa had a grass pitch at the time, so they were cancelled. But I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. Terry Christie was the manager. We had good players. Max Christie's son was in the squad. Gareth Evans, obviously ex-Hibs and current academy coach, was the striker. Scott Crabb as well up front. So you know there was some good players in that side, and as I say, it was only 2 games. But again, the first game back against I think it was Aberdeen away. I was starting the game, but it got cancelled. So you know, it's just one of those weird things that
circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on it and think, you know, really, really clever man management from Alan McLeish, because you're probably thinking, number one, when you're not in the squad to go to Trinidad, what's going to happen next? And certainly when you get sent alone, when a training camp coming up, you're thinking, blinking heck, I'm miles behind the pecking order here. But then suddenly you come back and he puts you in the team.
It's brilliant, and I think that's when you're starting to see the level of man management that Alec McLeish managed to transition with as well, and that's been you've learned a lot for that as we talk to your managerial career. But the following season, I've got down here McLeish left though, and Frank Soze came in as manager. Loads of Hibs fans that I talked to, every one of them asked me the same thing. Can you please give me a nod to Frank Soze, please? I mean, as a player, as one of the best players you've been to play with.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly, Hibs, Frank was a brilliant player, but he was a brilliant guy as well.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously left to go to Rangers. Frank got put in the hot seat. We weren't a brilliant team. Hibs had sold a little bit at that time. Mm-hmm. People, Mixu had moved on. Ulrich Larsson.
Kenny Miller away as well. He was here maybe this time as well. He's kind of Kenny Miller as well. He was here away by that.
Yeah, Kenny was away by then. Yeah, he was away.
Stevie Crawford as well. Stevie Crawford
was away. Craig Brewster was away. Mm-hmm. There was, I wouldn't say what Hibs were selling at that point, but certainly players had left, for a reason.
Yeah.
When Alec left, Frank was probably, we really, really, really wanted to do well for Frank, because Frank was a brilliant guy. He was a fantastic teammate, and he was a brilliant guy as a manager as well. We just weren't able to produce for him. Which was really, really sad. And it was a very short tenure he had. We get that. But, it was probably really harsh, actually, when you look back on how many, I think it was 15 or 17 games that Frank had. And, just because he was a, fantastic player, it doesn't mean he was going to, go straight to management. He was going to take off straight away. He had to go learn as well. It's a hard job to learn in, a team like Hibs. Fans are pretty unforgiving. But although what I would say, the fans would have backed Frank more than anybody, and given him more time. So when Frank lost his job, it was a pretty sad time for us all.
It took him time to recover, I think, with all the players leaving, and obviously, the key one who everybody wanted to do well for, and then obviously it's no work too. Did Bobby Williamson come in after that?
Yeah, Bobby came in after that. He'd done really well at Kilmarnock. In fact, believe it or not, I scored 2 goals on Bobby's debut. I was left back that day. I scored 2 goals after 20 minutes. So I think that gave me Bobby liked me after that. Mm-hmm. But I had never obviously worked with Bobby. I'd never met him before. And contrary to what people think, Bobby was really good. Bobby's a very, very funny guy as well. Really, really good humour. I know in the press and stuff that never was portrayed, but he was great. Probably played some of my best stuff under Bobby, to be honest.
Yeah. And I mean, his man management skills are brilliant. I mean, like you said, Bobby managed for years, and a great Scottish coach as well, I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
Another one that you always wonder why they never got up to that next level. There seems to be you have to go down south before you can.
Well, Bobby went down south after Hibs beat Plymouth. Mm-hmm. He actually done quite well, but again, it's probably because. But I wouldn't say Bobby was one of those guys that would like to put himself in the limelight too much and talk. He'd talk in pretty layman's terms, which is absolutely fine, because that's how us footballers talk. We don't talk like how people talk on TV or in the studio or writing columns. We talk as footballers. We talk about we use different words from what we've written down.
Yeah. And I mean, from there on, I've also wrote down though something I've got to discuss is Ajax Athens UEFA Cup game. Can you share your memories of that? That was a cracker, eh?
Yeah, amazing. Again, probably my first game in Europe for Hibs. It was 9/11. Was the day before. So we were flying out to Athens the next day, and literally, I'm not a great flyer. I'm better now, but at the time I wasn't good. So we were taking off on the runway, literally at full speed, and suddenly the engines just went died. No. And I'm like, what's going on here? And the game had been cancelled because of 9/11. Mm-hmm. So we had to go back to Athens the next week, and we lost 2-0, which wasn't a bad result.
No,
when we got there, it was mayhem. We got there maybe 2 hours before kick-off. Stadium's full. They're burning American flags They were climbing up on poles. It was crazy. I'd never seen anything like it at that age. But they beat us 2-0. They had a really good side, and then they came back to Easter Road, and we were 2-0 up going into extra time.
Yeah.
And then we eventually beat them 3-2, but obviously because of the way goals that we went out. But we were really unfortunate. Alec had made a really good game plan. It was 0-0 at half time, and then we were 2-0 up. Paco Luna misses a header that Paco would score 9 times out of 10 with about a minute to go, and then the rest is history.
Small margins, small margins. What I think experience is great for Hibs fans as well. You know, I mean, looking at Hibs, I mean, talking about getting in Europe. I mean, Hibs are creeping up that table. For the start of the season, I think I was looking and they're like 5 or 6 points, just off of the sort of European spots.
Yeah, they've picked up because I've seen a lot of Hibs, particularly at the start of the season, they were poor. I think by David's own admission, he would say the same. Players would say the same. The support certainly were saying the same. They were really, really struggling, and I feared for them, I have to say, because I looked around the league and I thought, oh God, what are they going to do? But one thing I would say, that the manager kept saying, they will come good. The manager kept saying, give us time, and I think Hibs done the right thing by giving the manager time. Again, I know he'd been interim manager a couple of times, but he's now his own man. And going into these jobs, no matter what anybody says, pressure is different from being a player. It changes when you're from being an assistant or a coach or interim manager to being the main man. It changes all the time. So delighted for David, first and foremost, and delighted for Hibs that they're climbing the table. They have, well, I try and remember, as good as the run has been of late, that's where Hibs ought to be anyway.
That's the standards,
Yeah, so they're not punching above their weight. They're just where they should be. And the next step now, and the next challenge for the players and the management team is how far can they get?
Yep, kick on, get into Europe, make sure they sustain the top 6. But no, it was good to see. I mean, David turned that, kept, like you say, kept saying, no, it'll come good, it'll come good. And the turning point for me, I'm sure it was Aberdeen game, where it went 3-2 down after putting all that effort and then managed to equalise. And that seemed to be the turning point after that.
Yeah, they scored. Rocky Bashiri scored really late on to make it 3-3. And since then, I think they've maybe lost 1 in about 14 or 15, maybe, something like that.
It's been great. So just moving on then. So your last season, you were the season after that, but you missed out on a lot of the season with injury of the knee.
Yeah.
The following season after that, you were made captain, and you played alongside Gary Caldwell as well. I mean, was that a good season? You enjoyed that last season?
Yeah, I think I made captain a little bit again, like going back just without knowing it. We were playing Hearts at Tynecastle. John O'Neill was the captain, and he dislocated his shoulder quite early in the game. He got thrown against, because Tynecastle was really tight at the time. He got thrown against the board and dislocated it. Right, I mean, I look back, it was probably a bit cheeky of me, but I didn't really mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't know. So I just picked up the armband and put it on, and that was it. I didn't think anything of it. And we lost that day. We lost badly that day at Tynecastle. And it wasn't until the following week that, and again, I had never thought about it. I really hadn't. It just wasn't in my makeup at the time of overthinking things. And it was about 15 minutes before kickoff, Bobby came to me and gave me the armband, like, "You're captain." It was, I think we were playing Rangers actually. And I was like, whoa, God, I literally hadn't thought about it. So yeah, became captain. Gary Caldwell signed on loan from Newcastle. I love playing with Gary. I've said that a lot. Gary, people are always have opinions on Gary, but as a teammate, I couldn't have asked for a better, centre half, because we would both make mistakes, both of us would, but we would try and dig each other out all the time. It was that kind of relationship that, just try to be good, honest teammates, like you would probably do for anybody. But I always felt with Gary there was an extra emphasis on trying to help, and people will underestimate Gary's ability with the ball was fantastic.
Great. I mean, he made a lot of caps for Scotland as well. I can see here. But when you moved on for Hibs, was this on the Bosman that you left, or?
Yeah.
And how did this move come about? Because obviously Alec McLeish did say all the years back that he believed in you, and clearly did, because you ended up working again under him. It was him that signed, but it was near the end of McLeish's tenure at Rangers, I think.
Yeah, well, it was again. I'd been injured the year before for quite a bit, and we were up at Tannadice the following season. Tony Mowbray was a manager, who was good as well.
Yeah.
We were 2-0 up. We lost the game 3-2 in extra time, which we shouldn't have lost the game. I remember being so disappointed that we didn't go through. And my agent at the time just texted me after the game, said, I'll meet you tomorrow for a cup of tea. I said, yeah, no problem. Again, I hadn't thought about anything. I really hadn't. I'm just glad to get back playing and being in the team. And then when I met him, he said, look, we've got this offer from Rangers, which I knew nothing about. They'd been watching the last few weeks. Obviously, it was like, say, Alec and Andy Watson was there as well. It wasn't so much ability-wise, it was more fitness, make sure you're all right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had this offer, from Rangers, and I was like, whoa, wow. I mean, it's not, I didn't expect it at all. I only told a couple of people, my dad being one of them, and a good friend of mine. And after that, it was, I wouldn't say it was easy, it was hard. It was hard because, we had a decent side, we had young players coming through. We were still in the Scottish Cup. I thought Hibs could win the Scottish Cup that year, actually, and that was a huge attraction to me.
Yeah.
And then Rangers put a bid in, I think it was the end of January. It wasn't a big bid because they knew, I made it clear my feelings. I said, look, I think we can win the Scottish Cup and I want to be here for that. But when a club like Rangers comes, it's very, very difficult to turn it down when you're at a Hibs Hearts.
Yeah.
Dundee. And supporters don't want to hear that and understand that.
Yeah, but that's, being honest, it's the truth, eh?
It's the reality. It's the reality. And it's not just financial. People also, it's all about, it's not, because when you go into those sort of clubs, you see the difference. It's huge. And that's nothing against any other teams. That's just the way it is when you look at the sort of the way that Rangers, Celtic in particular are here. It's down south. It's like Brighton to Man United.
Yep.
Brighton to, it's exactly the same. It's like, shall we say, Falkirk to Hearts.
Yeah.
Dundee. It's just the way it is.
Aye. And that's what you only get one career, eh? I mean, there's nothing personal. I'm coming across here as a fan, but I fully understand that if a player for the team that I support leaves to go into a bigger club, then it's part of it. You only get one career, and I wouldn't have understood that as a youngster, but now that I'm a wee bit,
of course,
football.
I've been there. I've been a Hibs supporter when Andy Gordon left, John Collins left, and you're gutted, but you grow up a little bit and you realise that you're right. It is one career. It's a very short career. It's not just financial gain, although that does play a part. There's no point in pretending it doesn't. But it's also about success. It's about getting better. It's about opportunities. It's about your next move after that. So there's a lot to consider. But it wasn't an easy decision, I have to say. Right up until I think I was going to sign the next day and to meet them properly. Yeah. So I remember phoning a really, really good friend of mine who's a big Hibs supporter, a massive Hibs supporter actually. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I needed a wee nudge over the line, which my dad probably wouldn't have been so firm. And the guy, I said, look, I don't know if I can do this. And he actually, I remember him saying to me, don't be so effing stupid. And when I heard that, I thought, okay.
It's a validity for your mate, and obviously a big Hibs fan. It's like sort of speaking to somebody that, fully gets it.
He was older and he's got more experience in life than me at the time as well. And when I heard that kind of took everything away from me, and I obviously done it. But great, I have to say. And
you played 43. You made 43 appearances with Rangers. I've got written down here. Is that just league appearances, or did you make probably more in the cup? Because
I think there was more. I mean, don't quote me on that.
I'm the same. It's you trying to drag out some of the stats sometimes, so it's better.
Just depends. I think it was more 60 odd, something like that. But again, don't quote me on that. But I loved it. It was a different parallel from a totally different universe when I went to Rangers.
Some of the players you joined that you were sorry to interrupt. Some of the players that you joined in amongst there again, it's a step up again. I mean, you're looking not just at everything around the club, but I mean, I've put in here. You've got Barry Ferguson, you've got Stefan Kos, Chris Boyd, Perso, Novo. They're all kind of throughout. Obviously, Sky helps, but a lot of them are household names as well. Eh?
Yeah, again, like it's about standards. You're training with these guys every day. You're right with Barry. We had Stefan Klos, Ronnie Waterhouse, Fernando Rickson, Michael Ball. Nacho was always there. Peter Lovenkrands, Dado Perzo, Big Mark. It was a high caliber squad that won the league the year before as well at Easter Road.
You played in that game, did you know?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. And I wasn't due to play in the game, believe it or not. the manager had pulled me a week before and said, I'm not going to put you in that position. And then we needed to get something out the game to get into Europe. So he pulled me a few days later and went, I'm sorry, I'm going to play you. And I said, no, absolutely fine. You know, of course, my attitude was play me. I want to play. I'd love to play. Just, I'm not going to try any less. I'm going to go out there and do my best because that's the nature of it.
Professionally.
Yeah, of course. I would never be able to live with myself if I hadn't done that. So we went, also went to Rangers, and I knew the manager, and obviously Andy Watson, the assistant, which again was another pull for me because I knew them. I knew the way they worked. I knew what they expected, and I'll always have an affinity to Alec. Well, because of the way he signed for Hibs, he gave me a debut for Hibs, he signed for Rangers. It's impossible not to.
No, brilliant. Great manager as well. I mean, going into him, you've been to learn so much for Alec as well.
Yeah, he was probably just a little bit ahead of his time without me knowing it. He would take me for extra sessions in the afternoon, basic stuff like how to head of the ball, because my heading wasn't great for a centre half. So he would take me away and work on it with me. He would help get the ball at my feet quicker. Just little things. And Alex was a ferocious competitor. I mean, even he was quite young when he was Hibs manager, so he used to play in the small-sided games on a Friday in particular. And by God, did you know what being his team? Because he would tear you to pieces because of his demands and his standards. But what he was doing was making you better at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, great to learn off it. But moving on for Alec McLeish, I believe some players' careers, right? You run through your career, you can't change obviously the time in your career, but some players just join teams at wrong times and right times. And I think you were unfortunate with Rangers. That was under the Paul Le Guen era, who came over with the great intentions, but just totally didn't work out at all.
Yeah, it didn't work out for Paul, which was a real shame because I liked him. I picked up a wee virus. I'd done the pre-season. I think we knew Paul was coming before pre-season started.
That's right, aye.
And it's like any player, you're on tender hooks a little bit. Doesn't matter what contract you're on, how much money you're getting, you want to play football. So everybody's kind of going, God, I wonder what he's thinking. There was a lot of press around it. You know, like Paul Le Guen's watched all the games and video, blah, blah, blah. And you're thinking, oh, God, I wonder what ones he's watched. I wonder what ones he was all right in, what he's looking at. Then I went in really, I remember pre-season 2 or 3 days into pre-season, and he pulled me at training. And somebody asked me to go on loan. And he said, I've told them no because I want you to be here. Now, I felt $1 million after that because that's what you want to hear. You look back on the career and think maybe that loan would have been better at the time. But at that point, that's all I want to hear. The manager of the Rangers saying, I want you here. Then we went to South Africa and we had, it was a really hard, Paul's a hard trainer. We had a hard pre-season. I picked up another little virus.
There's arthritis here as well. There was something.
I remember, do you know what? They say it was reactive arthritis. I remember being in the airport in South Africa and I felt terrible. I felt like I had the really bad flu. And when I woke up I was back in Edinburgh. When I woke up the next morning, I could hardly move. Literally hardly move. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? The only thing, that summer I'd been to quite a lot of places. I've been on holiday 2 or 3 times. I've been to Japan with Scotland as well. So I travelled a lot and I just wonder, I don't know, I just wonder, did I pick something up in those travels?
And it's maybe took longer, even though it's still lingering, it's maybe just kept, coming up every so often. Talking to Scotland, right, I need to make a wee nod to Scotland. What the hell is it like getting that call to say that you're about to represent your country and be called up to the Scottish national team? I mean, how is that?
Yeah, it's amazing because I think when you're young, of course, everybody has their team that they support. Everybody has the team they want to play for, and that's a dream. But the dream's also to play for your national team, be that once, 10, 100. You don't know. There's very few people that get to do it. So you've got to treat it as a great privilege as well. It's difficult. It's definitely more European-based style-wise. And I know that maybe sounds really obvious, but I mean in terms of training's not that high intensity because you're building up towards a game at the weekend normally. Different now. It's more of a cup final type fight around the camp because you're going for that one game normally. But what it does do is it lets you make more connections out with your club. It lets you be introduced to people like coaches, managers, players alike, and you build a great rapport. as well with the guys, and you get to know players that you probably wouldn't get to know. And of course, the caveat is you get to play for Scotland, because no matter anybody else's opinion, at that moment in time, somebody in the nation thought you were the best player for that position at that day. And that can't be taken away from you. You know, opinions will always be there, and that's fine. But for that moment, somebody rated you high enough to be that guy.
Yeah, must be awesome. I mean, what's it like when you walk out to the stadium, the national anthem's playing and all that? I mean, God, you must be shitting yourself, but at the same time, try to hold yourself together to not break down as well. Just get in the zone.
Yeah, I think you've always got that nervous energy anyway. I mean, I don't remember going into a game where I felt particularly at ease. I didn't feel particularly bad either. I just thought, got to do well today. I want to do well today. Nervous. The minute the whistle goes, the nerves have gone because you've got no time to react. That doesn't happen for everybody, because I've seen many players who are the best at training by a mile, amazing players. The minute the whistle goes in a game and there's 1,000 people, 10,000, doesn't matter. They go to pieces. People's mentality is completely different. The makeup of people's different. But it was certainly it was a proud occasion. I found it difficult though, because I was used to domestically getting lots of information about players, seeing the players all the time, watching them, playing against them 3 or 4 times a season. So if you got done one time, you always remember it and think, right, that won't happen again. We'll make sure we'll do this better and tighter. At European level and at international level, you seldom get those opportunities to rectify yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, great experience. Great to look back on in that as well. I mean, with Rangers, I mean, it wasn't a great period for Rangers and for yourself. With obviously the wee injuries and illnesses that you picked up. But for there, you moved on to Norwich, it was, and I've got in here you were signed by Peter Grant.
Yeah, Peter was
a legend of the game. I mean, the Scottish game especially.
Jim Duffy was the assistant as well.
God,
and we had David Marshall as a goalie. We had Simon Lappin, Scottish guy, Mark Fotheringham, Scottish, myself. So there was a wee Scottish contingent down there. And I probably left Rangers too early, from being truthful. I remember Walter pulling me in, who was great to me as well. Pulled me in and said, look, Norwich want to sign you. You're not going to play as many games as you want to play here. But he also said, you don't need to go. I'm not going to put you anywhere with the reserves or anything like that. He says, look, you don't cause me any bother. You train hard. You'll play some games, but as a footballer, the minute you're here, you're not going to play as much as you want.
Some games, yes.
Yeah. So you just don't know. What I would say, and I look back on it, it's probably the only. I don't regret going to Norwich because I wanted to experience English football, but I should have waited 6 months.
Yeah.
The winter.
What happened?
Just to see what happened. Just not jump the gun too quickly. So I went down to Norwich, who'd just been relegated from the Premier League. Again, it wasn't a brilliant squad. It was, for example, okay, with Darren Huckabee, Dion Dublin, Gary Doherty, of these players, but it was all right. And I did find it hard. It was a completely different type of football, completely different.
Do you mind if I jump in just before I forget? Because I've been meaning to ask as well. See, when you play like for Hibs and you're playing against Hearts, what's that level like in comparison to the Championship from a player's point of view? I mean, is there much in it?
It's hard to say because it's a different style. It's definitely more physical. I wouldn't say it was any. In fact, I would say it was below the technical when I was there. Maybe it's different. It was more below the technical level than what I was used to. But I certainly wouldn't say it was any higher than what I was used to playing. It was just different.
No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to be insight, just to for the fans.
That might have changed now,
But I mean, it's interesting to just see because it's always been made out that teams in Scotland couldn't even handle it in the Championship, and it's just interesting to just see your take as a player who's played in weak games and that.
Yeah, I think back then certainly there was a lot of clubs that could handle the Championship.
It's different now. I mean, you look at the Championship now, and I mean, there's players on ridiculous amounts of money, the transfer fees that are going through it, and everything. You can't compete.
Again, football's evolved so much and changed so much. The Championship now is a different gravy train than the one I was at the time. I would probably say it's a better league now than it was when I was.
I mean, that's not just the money side; the sponsorships coming in there and that. And again, that's looking at your career. You went through your career, but as your career was coming down, that's when all the sponsorships were coming through. And I mean, you imagine moving to Norwich now.
Yeah, well, that's it. again, but look, it's happened to lots of people. I always think of I was thinking earlier about the different eras of football, and we always think our era was the best. You know, regardless of what money we're getting, I think my era was the best. The guys in the 70s think their era was the best. The guys now will look back, you know, in 10 years, 50 or years' time, think they was the best. Money's always going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. You know, we were well paid at the time compared to other people in life. Footballers are now extremely well paid to other people in life, but that is just the way it's went. And that it's not just football, by the way. Sport's done that. It's you know, basketball.
I mean, I've always said it. I mean, I've always said if I was going to my work, right? I mean, of course, I'm not a football player, but if I was going to my work and 50,000 people were watching me and they were paying £25 a pop to watch me, you would expect a higher wage for that. Eh? It's no, it's not rocket science,
you know what I mean? It's I think football, is it still a working man's game? Yeah, it is. But it's a working man's game from afar for a lot of people now because it's not easy to get tickets. It's not easy to afford tickets. It's not the game that it was meant to be. That's for sure. Who changes that? I think we're too far gone now.
I think so. I mean, we were talking your Rangers career there, and I mean, they're in the talks with a takeover, and the millions of money that they're talking about, and that's ridiculous. Eh?
Oh, it's a different planet now to what it was back in the day, and I'm not sure it's a good thing, to be honest.
No, but it's something that we can't control. Eh? You just have to go away. It's kind of like the way of the world now. Eh?
You only have to look at the highest power in football and see what's happening there. That will tell you the whole story. It'll filter down eventually.
There was I remember seeing a picture, and there was like Platini, there was Maradona, and I can't remember who the other one is, and they were playing in like a charity match, and Platini's standing up with an anti-corruption, Maradona's standing with an anti-drugs, and you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, you know, when you look 25 years down the line, I didn't expect you to comment on that, by the way, but I just thought to point that out. But you went back to Hibs, and that was returning home. I mean, I think clearly Hibs was the best part of your career, and you worked alongside John Hughes as well, eh?
Yeah, well, I was down at Norwich. John Collins left Hibs really suddenly. Nobody expected it. They won the cup the year before. A lot of good young players, but I think they had 10, 11 games undefeated with a young squad. And then John left. Obviously, he wasn't happy with a couple of things. No. And then I wasn't playing at Norwich. I was dying to get back up the road, to be honest. And I got a call saying Hibs want to sign you. And I was like, well, they don't have a manager. So how can I sign you? He said, no, the chairman's assured me that the new manager wants you. Anyway, the manager turned to be Mixu Paatelainen, who I played with. So Mixu re-signed me. I went up to Edinburgh on the Thursday, signed, it was quite late at night, signed on the Thursday night, trained on the Friday with the team, and we went to Tynecastle on the Saturday. So my first game back was a derby game, which was probably the best game for me. Although I hadn't played for a number of weeks, it was the best game for me with the Hibs supporters, because they hadn't forgiven me at that point.
That gave you a chance, and there was, extra adrenaline.
And I done all right. So I kind of showed, I was back for the right reasons, and I was going to give my all. So Mixu signed me. We actually done all right. I think we finished 6th that season. Mixu's last 2 games was a draw against Rangers and a draw against Celtic, I think.
What's he doing with Cell now? Mixu, is he managing?
I think he's doing work for UEFA at the moment.
Mixu.
Manager, I enjoyed working under Mixu, I have to say. I thought it was really harsh on Hibs to sack him because we were actually okay. We were all right. We weren't. It's been a lot worse since, put it that way.
Your dad will say the same as mine now. I remember him playing when he used to play football. He was still playing.
Mixu was my gaffer. Then John Hughes coming after Mixu, who was a gaffer that both of them I played with. So I'm thinking, I'm scratching my head going, oh my God, I'm getting on a bit as well.
You're starting to notice it,
Yeah, of course. But again, Yogi was brilliant. I was with Yogi just 10 days ago. We were doing the Hibs, Ayr United Hibs game, and we travelled down again. It was great listening to him again.
That's right. In fact, I watched that game. That was a game
he's really clever. People, don't realise how smart he is. And when he came to Hibs, we were flying. We were flying first half of the season. We had good players: Liam Miller, Kevin McBride, Derek Radion was back. They Colin Nish up front. We were absolutely. I think we were top of the league going into think January the 1st we were top of the league actually.
Yeah.
And we had Rangers at home that day, and we scored in the first 10 seconds. The Rangers eventually won the game, but that's how much we were flying. It was, and then we had a dip after that. We got into Europe, and then we had a dip, and I was really, really sorry to see Yogi lose his job, because I felt, and I mean, maybe I don't mean to speak for him, but at that time I felt it was his dream job, and he could see it slipping away, and that's nice to see for anybody.
No,
and I was gutted for Yogi.
And I mean, as a manager now, you appreciate how little time you get. I mean, it's, you know, you can go for being a fan's favourite to 15 games later, like you say.
That's it. It's football is. It's. I don't know if it's got worse over the years or more recent, but it certainly feels that way.
It affects the youth setup as well, because I mean, I was speaking with, I can't remember, I think it was Lee Clarkey, and he was saying, I said, it's so hard to take a gamble to bring, you know, you get given the job 13 games before the season finishes. You've got to make sure you make a good impression. You can't risk bringing a youth player through, because the fans, and it's so difficult to. It's
very, very difficult. I've always said this, and I know it's easy for me to say because it's not my money. I've always wished a team or a club would come out and appoint a manager and say, this is a manager for the next 5 years, regardless of results. It's
or even a full season. A full season. They should this cutting the season halves.
I just wish he would come out and say it, and say, do you know what? Just back us. There might be some really bad times. There might be some really bad results. But in 5 years' time, so let's see where we are. And see, in 5 years' time, we're not where we want to be. Fair enough. Yeah, then we can make a change. But if they were just more transparent, I think the supporters would probably be on board with it.
They would. And a lot of that game, Ian, that comes into different board members that are buying clubs, and they didn't get the ethos of what the fans want and how Scottish football works. It's mad.
It's a. No, we like to talk about, you know, Eastern European football leagues in particular being mental, crazy. Oh well, of course. Like Neil Lennon went to Romania, came back after a couple of months. Oh, that was always going to happen. Guess what? It happens here.
Exactly. It's just
too far from home.
I've got here. I mean, when you finished playing, you had a few. You were with Dunfermline, you were with Brechin, and then I've got in here Tampa Bay Rowdies. How did that move come about?
Yeah, well, I played one game for Brechin because they were short players. I was actually going to Tampa Bay about 2 days later. Again, just connection. Somebody asked me to go over to Tampa. I went over there. Ricky Little, I think, was the manager.
How was the flight?
The flight was all right. Amazing what sleeping tablets can do.
I bet.
So I went over there for 10 days and quite enjoyed it. I didn't. It's probably, well, it is different from what it is now. Obviously, Robbie's over there being the manager. Yeah. It wasn't at the level it was at now. The facilities weren't at the level they're at now, and I came back. So their seasons are different. So they like play different. I think it was maybe January they started back.
Right.
So by the time I come back to Scotland, I'd actually went back to America to do a bit of coaching that somebody had asked me, and it's when I was in America the Dumbarton thing came around.
And when did you get all your coaching licenses and that? Were you doing that just as you were sort of leading up to retiring, or?
Yeah, I done my B license before I stopped playing. I think it was my last season, and then when I got my B, I went straight onto my A license. When I got my A license, I went straight onto my pro license.
Brilliant. Aye. And I mean, for there, like you said, I mean, you're looking here, you're a Dumbarton manager. Were you 31? Is that right? Have I got that correct? Aye. I mean, that's young for getting into management, but a lot of experience as well. And can I just rattle off just your 3 seasons at Dumbarton? You saved them for relegation, and then you were unfortunate with the playoffs. You were just below the playoffs the following season, and then the 3rd season, that was when you retired. But how did you enjoy your time at Dumbarton? The Suns.
Yeah, I loved it. I didn't expect to get the job, to be honest. Came out the blue. It was a level that I didn't think I'd get thrown in at. Went in there when they were really struggling. Soon realised there was a lot of things we could improve quite quickly. Small things.
Yeah.
You
know the standard there. I mean, in all due respect to teams like Dumbarton, and again, I can't remember who it was that said that the exact same to me, but it says when you drop down a level that's such a drastic level for what you're used to playing at, what they see as professional maybe isn't what you've seen as professional in your career.
it probably worked in my favour though, because I could improve things really quickly without costing money. But we managed. What I did notice quite quickly was with some good players, good, honest players. They were really honest. They were great guys. I have to say, they rallied together incredibly well. So we went on a wee run. We had we had a Scottish Cup game against Hamilton. They beat us 3-1, but they beat us quite easily. And then we had about 2 months of no games because of the weather. The weather was that winter was really bad. So it gave us time to get to know each other, work a little bit, and then when we came back, we won 4 out of 5 against good sides. And then after that, we just kind of crept up the table. But it was the players were decent, to be fair. We had Jimmy Lister up front, Brian Prunty, Gary Fleming, Mark O'Haney, Big Andy Graham. We had some good, Nicky Devlin, believe it or not. At Dumbarton, with Chris Kane at Dumbarton, with Paul McGinn at Dumbarton. We had some good players.
So it was a great time and good experience. I mean, looking here, you then went on to St Mirren. You were there a year at St Mirren. I mean, how did you?
Yeah, it was less than that. It was about 6 months. I just felt that at that time it was the right move for everybody. I thought the time at Dumbarton was coming to an end in terms of they needed freshened up. I needed freshened up. So I went to St Mirren. Unfortunately, been relegated, and again, I was only 33 or 34 at the time. I went into a lot of stuff that I didn't know about. Obviously, John McGinn spiking the leg. We had that. We had St Mirren's season that year had been quite turbulent because Tommy Craig was a manager with 2 assistants, Gary Teal and Jim Goodwin. Then Tommy Craig left, and Gary Teal then became the manager. Jim Goodwin then back in the changing room. And then I went in, Gary Teal still had a playing contract. So I had the 2 ex-assistant managers in the changing room. I had the John McGinn situation that he wasn't going to re-sign for the club. Plus, when you add in just the fact of relegation.
All the pressure of that as well.
And they were trying to sell the club. So I probably went to a really good club at the wrong time. But that's what
part of the journey.
That's what I felt was right at the time.
Joined Asker as assistant manager, and what happened next?
It wasn't quite as quick as that. I was still doing my pro license at the time, and my friend Kevin Nichols on the pro license. I knew Kevin from Hibs. He went to Norway when he was young, 2021, and built his life there. So we'd always kept up in the pro license, and he'd asked me to go over. It was about a year later, after I'd left St Mirren, and I decided, I was very thankful for the option or the offer, so I decided to go and have a look about November time. Had a look, came back, and then decided to go over in January. So I went over to Asker. I think it was January the 5th, 2017.
Right. And I mean, again, the amount of experience that you're gaining at still such a young age. I mean, you then moved on to Airdrie. They finished second in League One, Championship playoffs the next 2 seasons. Unfortunately, beating finals, that must have been devastating. They just to try and just get them back up to where a team like Airdrie should be.
Yeah, it was. The Airdrie thing came at the right time for me. I'd been in Norway for a year and a half. My dad had passed away really suddenly, which knocked me for 6 for a while. And then I thought I need to get back to Scotland. And then I calmed down a little bit. I said, well, you can't base your life on like my kids were here and stuff. So,
and that helps. I mean, obviously, with your dad passing, having kids, you become the sort of role of the family.
Things change for you in life. Life changes. It's simple as that. There's no other way of dressing it up.
No.
But I had to make sure I was making the correct decisions. And so I'd done a second year with Kevin, and I'd committed verbally to doing a third year.
Yeah.
So, I have to say, Kevin's a brilliant coach. One of the best I've seen. I know he's my friend and I'm biased, but I'm telling people, unbelievable. Really, really good. And I've told him that. There's things, obviously, Kevin needs to work on, but as a coach, fantastic. Knows what he's doing. But I just felt when Airdrie offered me the job, I just felt it was a good one for me personally. I thought it was a team that historically that I knew to be in the Championship, fantastic cup runs, cup finals against Celtic, beating Hibs and Hearts quite regular in the Scottish Cups. And when I spoke to the owners at Airdrie, or the owner, it gave me great vibes. So I decided to go and take the opportunity, and it was probably a huge point in my career doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you were 4 seasons there, 3 full seasons anyway, but 4 years there, And then you moved on to Wraith Rovers. Could you tell us again how that move came about? And obviously we know how it's sort of panned out now, but just your
Yeah.
experience at Wraith
Yeah,
Rovers.
it was obviously after we'd lost our second final in a row against Queen's Park. We were very unlucky that season. You couldn't even write the script. We're 25 games undefeated. Cove Rangers were 27 games undefeated. Just came up. I mean, incredible to have that going on in our league. And then we finished 21 points ahead of Queen's Park. I think we played them 8 times that season. They never beat us, and then we gave away a penalty.
One game.
About 4 minutes to go in the extra time in the final, and the rest is history for Queen's Park as well. So I was really, really low after that, deflated. And Wraith Rovers came in really, really quickly after the game. A couple of days, I think it was, or a day or two. And I just felt, again, a bit like the Dumbarton situation, I felt it was best for everybody. I genuinely felt Airdrie needed to go and try something different, because we tried really, really hard. We gave everything. The lure of Championship football for me again was quite high.
Yeah.
Again, it was a bit like leaving Hibs for Rangers. It wasn't easy because I loved working at Airdrie. I loved the people that I was working for more than anything. I loved the town, the working class of making sure these people were getting what they wanted to see on a Saturday, because it's really important to them. Yeah, and that's what I really, really enjoyed. But I just felt it was the right time for everybody to move on a little bit and try and refresh things up.
And I mean, that's the first season. I think, I mean, you were just really unfortunate. That was a season that, if Dundee United weren't in that league, I think you would have got Wraith up, but it just didn't work out that way. And I mean, it was a good experience, but
it's football, you know. It's, I think, for the last 5 years, our points total wins the league. But we were coming up against a really good Dundee United side. Again, I don't look back with that on last season with any regrets whatsoever. Disappointments, we lost 5 points to the bottom team. So you'll always look at that and think, God, is that what killed us? Maybe. But it was the way we played. It was the way we liked to play. It was the way we wanted to play. But I'm immensely proud of not just what we've done. On the park's really important. But when I went to Wraith Rovers, we had a lot of building to do. We had a lot of bridges to rebuild because of what happened previously before I went in with the David Goodwillie stuff. It really, really hurt the football club more, and Kirkcaldy, more than I even could imagine from as an outsider. When I went in, I quickly realised how much damage had been done, and we needed to do something really quickly and make sure it was really good to try and get people back supporting the club.
Yeah, and you've got to look at, I mean, you left them in a better place than when you joined them, and you've got that through your career with teams and managing and that. So that's all you can really do. I mean, it's impossible to find.
Yeah, that's one of my mantras as a manager. When you walk into a football club, leave it in a better place for the next person, because there is going to be a next person. You know, we can't hide behind it, but make sure you're leaving that place where the next person comes in and goes, "That's really good. That's really good. I'm not sure about that, maybe, or I don't like that." But make sure there's things in place, so that, and hopefully that person does the same to bring the club success.
Yeah, it's mental to hear from an inside point of view, and I mean, it's what we see, but that's what we want to hear as well. But what's the plans next then? I mean, you're obviously about to get back into coaching. You had any offers? Are you talking?
No, I've not spoke to anybody. I think when you lose your job, normally you expect it. I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming in the slightest. So it's a bit of a novelty at the start where you think, oh God, the phone's non-stop, people texting you, phoning you, asking you to do this, keep your head up. That dies down pretty quickly as well. Which is just the nature of the beast.
Do you have to put yourself forward for these jobs, or does your agent do all the work and then say to you, right, I've got a wee bit of interest, or how does it all?
I think it's I think there's probably 3 ways. Either your agent will do it, you'll do it, or the club will contact you. That's pretty much the only 3 ways it kind of works. It's maybe changing a little bit now with recruitment teams or recruitment companies. They might be going asked to look for somebody, and they'll maybe look through and see who they think's the best fit. But certainly at the start, the novelty is, a couple of weeks off. You can kind of do what you want for a while, but then it gets
the house environment and being, not having that structure day to day when you've had it for you were like,
that's it. There's only so much walking around you can do. There's only so much gym you can do. There's only so much of whatever you like you can do. Our appetite is football. Our bread and butter is football. We can say what we want about it, but that is our drug. you know, that is what we love, and that's what we want to do. So I'm looking to get back in. When that'll be, who knows? But I'm certainly, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I believe that doing these podcasts with myself, these are the best way you can possibly do it. And if you could just nod your head, I'll let that.
Look, I'm not the best at putting myself out there. It's never been my thing. Some people are amazing at it. I wish I was better. So when I do these things, when I speak, it's always the truth. It's always, there's no hidden agenda behind it. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't want to be back in football, because I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is what I'm trying to achieve as well. You're actually speaking to me like a fan. I'm not a fellow football player. Like, I haven't to look up to and be. You just speak like fans, and I mean, you're here for ages talking before. It's brilliant.
Football supporters aren't daft. As much as people like to treat them as daft, all football supporters, they can see through everything.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen it all. They're not daft people, so there's no point. Why treat them like that? Mm-hmm. You tell them the truth. When things are good or you think you've done well, you tell them. You don't have to agree with it. When things have been poor or things are bad, you say it, because they don't want to hear a manager sit there and say, "Oh, I thought we were very unfortunate. No, we just didn't play very well today."
We'll fix it. We'll train hard.
We're going to try and do better. Mm-hmm. But when you play well, you say, "I thought we were really good." And if you lose a game playing well, you say, "Do you know what? The scoreline was poor, but our performance was really good." It really was. But there's no point in trying to, tell them crap,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that's us a bit wrapped up here. And I mean, obviously, hopefully, I look forward to seeing you back in management very soon. And I hope everybody's enjoyed listening and watching this as much as hopefully you've enjoyed having the conversation. Takes you down memory lane, doesn't it? It takes
Absolutely,
you back to stages of your career.
Definitely.
Well, right, so what I'll do is I'm just want to say thanks for allowing me the opportunity to chat with you, and I hope you've enjoyed that. And if everybody else could like and subscribe if they've enjoyed that. And next up on the podcast, I've got Laurie Sanchez. So if you keep your eye open for that, that'll be an interesting one as well. So thanks very much for allowing me the opportunity.
No, not at all.
I really appreciate it.